Yeah, because right after they blow, it's a signal that Shabbat is starting right away, and therefore we have to go ahead and therefore Shabbat is beginning right away, and therefore they can't be busy carrying the shofar in the street, right? If Shabbat is beginning right away, you can't be carrying the shofar in the street. So therefore, you have to go ahead. Therefore, they have this place on the roof. They said it's a mokam snua, private area, special spot on the roof to hide the shofar. So, so the bottom of so 35b4, because we said the last thing we said about 3-4 lines from the top in the art scroll, and in the Hebrew it's a few lines from the bottom, is the fi she'ein metaltalin. You can't handle lo es shofar, lo es chasotot. You can't handle on Shabbat not a shofar. Good morning, Nathan.
Morning.
And you can't handle on the Shabbat the chatzotrot. You can't handle the trumpets. And therefore, that's why we had to go ahead and have a place on the roof that immediately they would place the shofar, the chazan, knesset, the one who was blowing the shofar, to notify the people that it's time to get ready for Shabbat. The one who sounded the alarm, he had to have a special place on his roof because of the problem of mukseh. So the Gemara now brings up an apparent contradiction from a different Braita. Because you just told me the shofar can't be moved. You told me the chatzot can't be moved. The trumpets can't be moved. We have a Braita that says, Vatanya, a Braita that says, shofar metaltel v'chatzot eina metaltelen. Says that the shofar can be moved. So it seems to be, you told me before the shofar can't be moved. And here we see that it can't be moved.
Maybe because he's the town crier, there's no worry that he might go and walk on Shabbat to ask someone else how to blow it. And so he might be the exception to the klal.
Okay, what Nathan, what you're talking about is if the issue would be a concern of coming to carry the shofar, but we're saying even in the Rashi points out even in Reshut HaYachid, even in a domain that there's no issue of carrying, you're not coming to carry from private to public, you're still not allowed to handle the shofar on the Shabbat, because shofar would seem to be a utensil that's used for blowing, for musical purposes, and that's something that we can't do on the Shabbat. So therefore, it's like a kli shemalachto le'isur. It's a kli utensil used for isur, for prohibited purposes. So therefore, it would be considered mukseh. So that should make it mukseh, just like a screwdriver, which I have right over here. A screwdriver is a kli shemalachto le'isur. It's used to building purposes. It's used for items that I'm not allowed to do on Shabbat, and therefore it's mukseh, and therefore the shofar we can't blow a shofar on Shabbat. So good morning, Asaf. So the shofar should also be in that category of a kli shemalachto the isur, a utensil that's used for prohibited purposes on Shabbat, and therefore it should be mukseh. And here we have a different Braita that says that you could move the shofar, that the shofar, which seems to indicate that it's not mukseh. So that seems to be the contradiction. In one place you tell me you have to leave it on the roof in a private area because you can't move a shofar. And this Braita says, good morning, Ezra, that you could move a shofar. So the Gemara says, so we have a contradiction. Can you move a shofar or can't you move a shofar? So Tosfos points out, this Braita that says you can move the shofar, that's maybe you're moving the shofar for something that's a permitted purpose. The Sorach, Gufo, or Mekomo, we have a law. If someone left a screwdriver on the dining room table, right? And you need the screwdriver to, let's say, Hello, Mark. Good to see you, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. Good to see you. So if a person left a screwdriver on the dining room table, and so the screwdriver we said is mukseh because it's used for prohibited purpose generally. But if you're going to use a screwdriver for permitted purposes, right, on the Shabbat, for whatever, let's say you have something, let's say you need to the door is locked, and you need to not to build. Let's say you just need to touch something. That thing that's whatever you call that locks the door. You just need to push. If you would have a something that's thin, you could just touch. Move it. Let's say you're going to use a screwdriver just to move it, not to build, not to fix, not do any of that. Something you could have done if you would have a little piece of cardboard that you could put it in. And if you use the screwdriver in a way that's permitted, or let's give the more classic example, a hammer. A hammer is a utensil that's for Isur. It's used for building purposes, for prohibited on Shabbat. But let's say you have a walnut that you can't crack. You could technically you could take the hammer and crack the walnut with the hammer, because that's a permitted activity of cracking a walnut. And I didn't have a walnut cracker, so I'm using the hammer. So for a permitted purpose, you could use the hammer.
You had to designate the hammer before Shabbat as a nutcracker.
That would make, good morning, Adam. If you designate it before Shabbat, that I think would make it no longer a hammer, makes it a nutcracker. But even if you did not, good morning, Simon, even if you did not designate it before Shabbat, you did not designate the hammer before Shabbat as a nutcracker, right? You went ahead and it was a hammer. Technically, so therefore it has a status of mukseh, because it's a utensil that's used for building. It wasn't designated as a hammer, as a nutcracker. But l'tzorach gufo, if I need to use it for itself, I'm going to use the tzorach gufo. I'm going to use it in a way, in a permitted type of use, by cracking the nut. It's permitted technically. So that's the rule, right, Simon? Kli shemalachto legufo, a utensil that's malacha, its general use is for prohibited purposes. The sorach gufo, if you need for you to use it for itself, you're going to use it for itself in a permitted fashion. Umekomo, you need the place. Mutat, you can move it. So Tosfos asks, what's the Gemara? Good morning, Morris. Good to see you. And of course, Adam as well. What's the Gemara? We're on 35b4. What's the Gemara? The Gemara is asking a contradiction. In one place it says that the shofar, you can't move a shofar. At one place it says the shofar can be used. One place the shofar can't be moved. So the Gemara said that's a contradiction. So Tosfos says, what's the big contradiction? Look at the Tosfot. Teimulari, the bottom Tosfot. Al Karach Hadasho the Tatla Shofar. The last Tosfot on Lamed Hey Amud Beis, 35b4. The allowance to move a shofar, Adam, you got it? The last Tosfot at the bottom is Al Karach. That's Hainu L'Serach Gufam L'Serach Mekomo. You need to use it for a permitted purpose or for its place. The Mechamel itself. So it says, because if you want to go ahead and move a shofar, because the sun is shining down on the shofar, and you don't want it to beat down on the shofar, you can't move the shofar. But if you need it for a permitted purpose, you could go ahead and use. So maybe Tosfos says we could answer the apparent contradiction is because the place where it says you can't move it is when you want to move it, not for. You just want to move it, let's say, out of the sun, not for a positive, to use it for a permitted purpose. You're not moving the hammer or the shofar because you want to use it for a permitted purpose. You're moving it for some other reason. That's mukseh. But when it says that you're allowed to move the shofar, maybe that's talking when you're moving it for a situation where you're in a way that you're allowed to move it, when you need the place or you want to use it you're going to use the shofar for somehow in a permitted fashion. Not blowing the shofar.
Why would they have to bother with this? That would be true for anything. Why about the shofar is there a new case?
So so you want to say, because let's understand the shofar. The shofar could be used. The Gemara is going to say it could be used since the shofar is bent, has a bend, it's curved. It could be used as a cup to use like a little cup to give some drink to a young child. So maybe the question is, how do you identify the shofar that's multi-purpose? It's used as a instrument to blow. It's also used
That
as
would be
a.
true for anything.
So therefore
It'd be true for anything that was curved. That this has been brought out as a separate example. There must be a reason that is different than everything else.
Okay, and therefore it's coming to say that even if you want to use it for the child, you can't use it, right? That's what you want to say, right?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to understand why they brought the shofar out as a separate example when nothing else is brought out as a separate example, and it seems to be similar to so many other things that have other uses.
Right. Okay. So what Nathan is saying is, I mean, it's a little bit similar to what Tosfos was saying. I mean, Nathan is saying that why does the fact that we spell out that shofar can't be moved, if it's similar to any other type of utensil that's used for prohibited purpose, and the fact that it says it can't be used would seem to indicate it can't be used even for the child. It can't be used even, meaning it's different than the normal utensils that are used for prohibited purposes. It's even stronger. So let's see what the let's see how the Gemara deals with this contradiction. I mean, Tosfos says that the Gemara was thinking that the language of the Braita that says you can't move the shofar, it doesn't indicates even for the purpose of needing it for itself or for its place, because now so let's see what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav says, Lo kasha, kan be yochid, kan be tzibur. The apparent contradiction of the Braita, that one place it says you can move a shofar, and one place it says you can't move a shofar, is if it's for an individual, that an individual, you could use it for multi-purpose. It has multi-purpose as for an individual. You want to use it for blowing, so that's prohibited. But if you want to go ahead and move it for a child, you want to go ahead and use it for drinking purposes. So that you want to draw water to give to a child, so that would be allowed to go ahead and move such a shofar for that purpose on Shabbat. But over here, tzibur, when it says you can't move the shofar, right? We were talking about the shofar that they blew for the community. It was a shofar that was used for it's a shofar that's a communal shofar that belongs to the community. It's used for communal purposes, like waking up the people, not waking up people, sounding the alarm that Shabbat is coming. So therefore they will blow the shofar. So therefore it's not used for other purposes. Therefore it would be considered, doesn't have that permitted use for individual purpose, for individual people. So therefore the Gemara says that would be mukseh. That shofar would be mukseh. Now Rashi seems to indicate that the fact that the individual shofar is used for not only for blowing the shofar, but even for drawing water, that might not even be classified as a mukser item. Meaning this it didn't, usually you would say that something, you would identify that as a muksa item, but it has a permitted use when you use it in such a fashion to draw water for a child. Well, Rashi seems to indicate that the fact that it has this multi-use, it's actually it takes it out from actually being a muksa item. So the Gemara says, so the Gemara wants to make a distinction between a shofar for community, which doesn't have individual personal use. You don't use it, and therefore that would be mukser. That's a shofar you can't move. But a shofar, morning again, Mark. But a shofar for a individual will not be, so to speak, mukser. So the Gemara Amalei Abaye. So Abaye says, let me ask you a question. What are you telling me? You're telling me that the shofar, that's a private shofar, is, morning, Stephen. You tell me that a private shofar is not muktzeh. Because why? Because it's used for drawing water for children. What is the purpose? What is it used for? What is it fit for in a personal shofar? You could go ahead and take water. You could feed water to a child. You could scoop up the water like a cup and give it to the kid to drink. So the Gemara says even a shofar, now we're on 36A1. So a shofar, the communal shofar, yeah, it's used for blowing the shofar to notify the community that Shabbat is coming. Welcome, Steve. But also the shofar could be used to help a child that's poor. A child that's poor, that doesn't have people his parents are not capable of supporting him. So because the parents are not capable of supporting him, so Rashi says it's on the community. It's on the community to support this poor child, right? So therefore it has use. But that shofar is not just limited to the use for blowing for the community or whatever the communal purpose is. It could be used for individual purposes in a permitted fashion, as a cup, to draw some water, right, Simon? To draw some water to give to the kid. And furthermore, the Gemara says the two Hadatanya. We have a different braita. What does the braita says? Kishem shemetaltel as a shofar. Just like you could go ahead and move a shofar, kach metaltel as a chasot rod. So too, you could go ahead and move the chasot rod. Now the chasot rod, the trumpet, let's say, is a straight instrument. It doesn't have that curve like a shofar that you can go ahead and use it to scoop up water, which is a permitted type of action on Shabbat. Scoop up some water, use it as a cup. The chasot rod is only used, its only purpose is to blow. And here we have a different braita. How are you going to address this? Kashem shemetaltes hashofar kach metaltes hachasot rod. Just as you could go ahead and move the shofar, so too you could go ahead and move trumpets. Namani, who is the author of that braita? Which is, until now we brought two braitos before. One braita, both braitos said before you can't move a trumpet. The only question is, a trumpet is mukseh. The only question in the braita beforehand, can you move is a shofar? What's the status of a shofar? Can a shofar be moved? Can a shofar not be moved? It doesn't have that second. Now, it is possible to think of a situation that you could, if you want to use a trumpet, let's say you have your napkins on the table, and you want to take your trumpet and it's windy outside, and put the trumpet on the table to hold down the napkins. Technically, that would be a permitted use, but it's still identified, as a muksa item, right?
Like we said, anything could be that.
Right. So if we explain the Gemara that the shofar, according to the way Rashi understands the Gemara, that a shofar is Rashi's understanding is that the fact that it's used for the child, maybe he's not classifying it as a muksa item, even though, we would classify a shofar as a muksa item, right? We would say a shofar is muksa. But Rashi, at least in explaining this Gemara at this point, the opinion that says the opinion of the Braita that says that you could move the shofar, right? There's three Braitos. One Braita says you can't move the shofar. So one Braita is clearly, according to Rashi, is identifying shofar as a muksa item, which let's say that's how we hold, right? Let's say we hold the shofar is muksa. That's our opinion. But there's another Braita that says, good morning, that the shofar is not muksa. Meaning there's a different opinion, a dissenting opinion that says that a shofar is not muksa. Perhaps because of its multi-purpose, and maybe it was actually used in that fashion. Maybe they used it as a drawer to pick up the water to feed the child. So maybe that opinion held didn't classify it as a muksa item. So, but now we said, but those two opinions both had that the trumpet was classified as a muksa item. The trumpet it's not a common use for anything that's permitted. Let's say a shofar, maybe it was commonly used as like a cup, as a drawer to draw some water. Maybe that was something that people, used. They didn't have all the utensils that we have today, and maybe this was commonly used in that fashion. But how do you explain the trumpet? The trumpet is not used it's not commonly
Trumpet
used.
only has communal purposes.
What'd you say?
Trumpet only has communal purposes.
Right. So a trumpet you would say, is a muksa item. You don't have that. It's not a multi-purpose item. And yet, you won't identify as multi-purpose. And yet, there's a Braita that says a trumpet is not muksa. So how do we explain how do you explain that apparent open contradiction between trumpet and, one Braita says trumpet is prohibited, is muksa, and one says trumpet is not. So the Gemara says, look, what did you say? Oh, what's the trumpet? That's not. Okay, so that's what the Gemara is asking. The Gemara is asking, it's a contradiction. So what would be the logic? The logic would be if you have a very lenient opinion about, if you say that muksa is only under certain circumstances, meaning to be classified as muksa has to reach a certain bar, reach a certain level. Right. It would. Right. That's what the Gemara is going to identify. Maybe when you do something, that you openly do something to separate it from your use. Perhaps, let's say, if you go ahead and you take fruits and you put it on the roof for it to ripen. Certain things that you did an action to remove it from your use. So when you do something, an action, when you are actively involved in separating it from your use on Shabbat, maybe that's what he holds. But if you don't do an action, we're going to see the Gemara is going to identify right now. The Gemara is identify what is this opinion. So the Gemara says, El Lokasha. There's three different rabbis, three different opinions running around here. The Gemara says regarding Muktzeh. Muktzeh is not an easy, clear-cut situation. Everybody's in agreement. What's called Muktzeh on Shabbat? What's separated from you on Shabbat? And what? Good to see you, David. And what's not Muktzeh on Shabbat? It's much more a lot of discussion, a lot of disagreements of what's identified as Muktzeh. So here the Gemara says, Harab Yehuda, Harab Shimon, Harab Nechemia. So those are the three opinions. So Rashi says, Harab Yehuda. If you look, Rashi says, Harab Yehuda. You have the top Rashi on the top of the page. Shofar metaltel. The opinion that says that the shofar could be moved on Shabbat. V'chasotrot ein metaltelin, but the trumpets are considered a muksa item, classified as muksa, is the muksu of a shofar, because the muksahu. V'chasotrot is something that's muksa, separated from it. Of a shofar Torah kli alav. A shofar has this multi-purpose. It's used to draw water, to feed the child. So therefore, the shofar will be considered not mukseh according to that opinion. So we have one opinion that makes distinction between a shofar and a trumpet, and that's Rabbi Yehuda. However, the opinion that says that you could actually move the trumpet and you can move the shofar, if you can move the trumpet, you can surely move the shofar, that's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says that Mukseh is much more lenient regarding meaning he says to be mukseh, you got to be a higher, a higher level to be mukseh. You have to reach a certain bar, like we said, to be mukseh. You have to do something maybe openly to separate yourself from it. That is the opinion of Rav Nechemia. That which we said that look at the Rashi. Nechemia. What's Nechemia? That he says that even a shofar you can't move, like Mark said, which is more stringent. Not only a trumpet you can't move. It's from Nechemia. He says the only time you can move something is only something when you're moving it for its main use. And a shofar's main use is not as a cup for children, to draw water and to feed a child. It does have that use, but when something is right, he would say you can't go ahead and take a hammer and crack a walnut on Shabbat with a hammer. Even now, what do we say? A hammer is mukseh, right? You don't leave a hammer around on the table, right, Steve? You got to get the hammer away. I know you're handicapped. You got to get the hammer away, but the hammer has to be away. But if you didn't put the hammer away, and you're having some nuts, you have some good, nice big walnuts Friday night, or whatever you want to crack it open, you could technically use the hammer to crack that nut, but not according to Nechemia. Nechemia says you only could use an item on Shabbat could only be moved for its purpose that it's designated for, and if it's not designated for that purpose, and therefore it's not designated to go ahead and draw water, therefore you cannot. It will be a problem of mukseh. And the Gemara says, "Umay shofar," and the Gemara says, what is the meaning of shofar that we said in the Braita? The Braita from Nechemia says that you can't move the shofar. Shofar is chasotrot. And the Gemara says that, we all know, until now, we say a shofar is a small horn, chasotrot is a straight horn. But the Gemara is saying now that there was a switch. There was a switch in after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, they started calling a shofar a trumpet, and they call a trumpet a shofar, meaning the word shofar, after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, denoted a trumpet, a chasotrot. And the word chasotrot denoted a shofar. Now, what's going on over here? So I saw a beautiful idea. The Gemara says there were three things that when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the name of the name change. Some people change their names. They get married. Now the wife got a new name. It was a name change, right? But here the Gemara says that when the Beit HaMikdash got destroyed, there was three things that the name changed. And we're going to explain why. What were the three things? The Gemara says, "Umay shofar nami chasotrot." Shofar is chasotrot. That Rav Chisda said, and by the way, Tosfos adds a point, Mark, just to address that Rav Shimon, let's say we said he would say that we said before, Rav Shimon says there wouldn't be a problem of the chasotrot, there won't be a problem of the trumpet. But we said he would agree that, let's say, certain things, if you did an action to separate it, you did an open action to separate, like you put it on the roof to separate from it, that what he would agree would be mukseh. But also Tosfos says, let's say if you have an item that you're afraid to move, if you don't move it because let's say a knife of a mohel. If you're a mohel, if you do circumcision, that knife is a very sensitive blade. You don't want it to get any nicks or any problems. Or let's say a shochet, someone who is a slaughterer, right? That knife, one of the big jobs of a shochet is to make sure that knife is perfectly smooth. He has to run his nail along the blade. and on the side, different three sides to make sure that his nail won't get caught in the blade. So there's no nicks, nothing. So that's if you're in a house of a shochet, of a slaughterer or a mohel, hands off. We don't move that just to move. We're very sensitive on that. Therefore, our mind is separated from using that in a very serious way. We're very and therefore that would also be, Tosfos says, that would be a case that Rav Shimon would agree with Mukseh. But just a trumpet, okay, you want to move a trumpet, you want to move the trumpet, move the trumpet. It's not something that he would say is a problem to move, but only something which is a much more serious type of level of Mukseh, right? That's one see Tosfos says that in the beginning of the Tosfot. Okay, so the Gemara says, Chizah says, the Hani Tlat Mili, these three things, Ishtanu Mishmayu, the name changed Michar Beit HaMikdash. What were the three things? Chasotra, Chasosarta, the trumpet is called now Shofara. It's called a Shofar now. You go into a store, you say, I want to show, someone wants to buy their child a trumpet, you got to ask for a Shofar. You want to buy your child a shofar? By the way, I think it's a great present, by the way. A mitzvah present. Buy a kid a shofar. I'm just suggesting. Okay. And your grandson. Okay. That's not a toy. If it's bar mitzvah. Okay, bar mitzvah. It's not a toy. It's a big boy. Maybe he'll learn how to blow the shofar. You know what? I would say today there's so much noise going around today, what kids have today. So this noise, I think it's a better noise, and it's a unique present. Buy for your grandson. Just give you a little. Yeah, but I'm just giving you. Okay. I want to get the kids involved. It's a nice thing for a kid to get practicing. They're busy with all different things, kids. Let them be busy blowing the shofar, right, David? Not a bad idea, right? We need someone to blow the shofar. Who's here? And this young boy said, I know how to blow the shofar. Okay. So and then also Shofara became chasotrot, and the shofar became called a chasotrot, a total change. L'maynaf gemina, what's the difference to know about the name change? Why do you need to know about the name change? The Gemara said, l'shofar Rosh Hashanah. You get the wrong item. If you go into the store, you want to blow, if you want, we all know on Rosh Hashanah you have to blow a shofar. But if you're going to go ahead and say, I want to blow a shofar, you go to, I want to buy a shofar for the shul. You have to know, you ask for a shofar, they're going to give you a trumpet. That's not kosher. You can't blow a trumpet for Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, you have to know, you have to ask for a chasotrah. You have to ask for the chasotrah, and that will give you what we traditionally called a shofar. And I saw, and also we're going to see also a rava, but with an arava, a willow, right? For an arava, for the lulav, Arvei Nachal, and also for the Oshanot, what we call a Arava. Now they call it a Safsefa. A Safsefa is it's not kosher. It's a type of, it's similar to the willow, but it's something that's a little different. Its edges are different. See, on the bottom it says it's white stem and rounded, serrated leaves. And that's not, it grows in mountainous areas. That's not the serrated leaves. That's not, the leaves of a willow are straight. They're not, there's no serrated, it's not cracked, it's not serrated as you go along. It's smooth running across. And this safsefa is not kosher. So if you today, now what was once called an arava, which is the kosher, arvei nachal, the person you have to have a willow, is now they call that a safsefa. What they call the safsefa, now they call it arava. No, that's what I'm saying. It's similar family or family, but it's not kosher. It's not kosher for the lulav. You gotta know what's kosher for the lulav. So therefore, now you gotta ask for a safsefa, not ask for. Now, then the Gemara is gonna say the lulav. Minus the lulav, you gotta know what's for the lulav. And the third thing the Gemara says, Torah, a large table. When you want to buy the large table today, a large table is called the Betorta, and a Betorta is called the Betorah. what was called when you want a large table, you called it a betura. Today they call it a betutarta.
What was before?
Again, before betura was when you go into a store, you wanted to buy a large table, you called it a Torah. Now, if you want a large table, the word that used to refer to a small table now refers to a large table.
Pictura, you get a small table.
Now, if you say petura, they're going to give you a small table. And when you say petuta, when you say what was used to be called a small table, now they call that a petura. What used to now that's called a petura. Well, this happened now. This happened when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Now, why? So I saw a beautiful commentary. One idea is that when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, everything is turned upside down. The whole Jewish community is turned upside down. Everything is v'nahapachu, right? Like we have in the Megillat Esther. V'nahapachu, there was it was a turn from sadness to goodness. So here was the turnover in the world for the Jewish community, for nationally, was a turnover, total switch, total opposite of what we used to, having the divine presence, having the Shekhinah, having the temple. Now we don't have it. So, and that's indicated by these three things, because we no longer have that table, the shulchan, that they had the showbread, the lechem apanim. That's no longer here. It's been turned over. We no longer have in the Beit HaMikdash, they would, and
Is that where they use a larger table?
it was a nice size. It was definitely a large thing. But it's more that we don't have there was a turnaround. We don't have the table. We don't have the table anymore. We don't have the table of the Beit HaMikdash. We don't have that. What's that again? Arava, yes. Arava was used every day during they would, like we do on Hoshanot, we take it the seventh day. So they had every day Hoshanot in the Beit HaMikdash. Every day they would take Arava, and they would place it by the border of the Mizbeach every day. And the other thing is the shofar that they would on the Karbonot, on the Chasot Road, they would blow by the Karbonot, and now we don't have that anymore. So these items are connected to what was going on in the Beit HaMikdash. Now we don't have it anymore. So therefore, the people, to remember the loss, not to get used to the exile and forget about what we're missing, they turn things around. They gave different names for different things. That was a nice idea that I saw. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Thank you, David, for joining. Thank you all for joining. We got your nephew on the deal too. All the best, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward. Thank you so much. Have a great look. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank God. That's beautiful. Thank you for coming. Right, Morris? Thank you.